I'm going to show you why some coaching and consulting businesses with less than 2,000 followers are outselling the bigger influencers in 2026, in this AI era that we're living in. Because it may be no secret that information is a commodity. We have tools at our disposal now, like ChatGPT and Claude, and pick your flavor, to where we can pump out content very easily within minutes, sometimes within seconds. And consumers can find any how to, any information they want in about the same amount of time, minutes to seconds, depending on what they're looking for. In fact, Google shows there's now 1.2 billion posts being published across all platforms. And Meta has shown that around 84%, and it's climbing literally week by week, percent of content is AI generated or heavily assisted by AI. And so we're in this weird time where people are trying to figure out, like, how do I use AI without like shooting myself in the foot? And I've seen it time and time again where I have coaches or consulting company, or sorry, coaches or consultants come to my company and they're asking for help. Like, people are running top of funnel ads and they're not booking as many calls as they once were, or they're just not making enough sales, at least predictably. And they're posting content and they might get attention, they might get some engagement, but they're struggling to really stand out in this noise and to really keep a consistent flow of clients coming in, of sales coming into their business. So I'm going to walk you through what I'm experiencing within my own businesses, and I've got my hands in some pretty large businesses, from some multiple 6 to even 7-figure companies that I am helping with their marketing and their sales departments. And so I'll share some of the information that I see working in real time right now in hopes that it's going to freaking help you. And so with all of this said, no matter what your following is, whether you have an Instagram following or an email list of 1 to 10,000, or if you have more, this is even more pertinent to you if you have a bigger following, because you need to know how to isolate it down so you can create consistent sales. The first stage here is you've got to understand that it's not just about sharing information anymore, as I alluded to. It is about creating demand. If you want to be able to create a consistent flow of sales, whether you're trying to get more calls booked, you're trying to get more people to buy from your sales page, whatever your mechanism is, it's about creating demand. Where the old way of doing things, as I was just touching on, is maybe you run some top of funnel ads on Facebook or Instagram and you send somebody a lead magnet or whatever it is, and you try to DM them to book a call or to send them into the next step in your sales funnel. And that's becoming increasingly more expensive for many companies because everybody's doing it. It's relatively easy. The bar has been lowered, if you will, because it's easier to create ad copy, it's easier to create content. And so it's much more expensive to get that attention. And even if your main focus is on trying to go viral and doing that whole viral reel strategy, it's like it's harder and harder to get the right types of attention. It's easy. Like, I could take my clothes off and run outside butt naked and film it and put it online, and I'll probably get attention. Right? It's not hard to get attention. It's harder to get the right attention, the ideal clients, the people that you want to serve. And so at the core of all of this, we want to understand that it's about creating demand. So how do you go about creating demand? Well, the first step is you have to learn how to influence people. We need to get your ideal clients that are consuming your content to move forward, to take an action. And there are some laws at play here, and I'm going to share with you some of the principles, and then I'm going to share with you some things tactically that you can do. But in order to influence somebody, we need to know what words to say to them. Does that make sense? We got to be able to say the right words to them in the right way. And dare I say, in the right order when it comes to how you're posting content or doing videos or whatever it is that you're sending out. So that way we are attracting the right people and repelling the wrong ones. And there's an analogy that I heard that I love. And I shared this in a previous video, but it bears repeating. Imagine you're going into New York City, Times Square. It's New Year's Eve. There's thousands and thousands of people out there. Everybody is like yelling and having fun. Imagine if you just go into the scene and you just start yelling too. You might get a couple heads to turn, but nobody's going to pay attention because everybody's yelling. That's kind of like the social media landscape right now. Everybody is yelling. You are maybe getting a couple heads to turn, but maybe they're not the right heads. They're not the right people. Versus, let's contrast that. You go into New York City, Times Square, same situation, but you have a dog whistle and you blow that dog whistle. The only creatures that are going to turn are likely dogs. This contrasts to what you should be doing on social media. You have to dog whistle your ideal clients. That doesn't mean you're serving dogs, but you need to know how to say the right words in the right way that are going to attract the right people and repel the wrong ones. And so the first step of all of this is having a clear message. Now, I've done videos on this. I have a full 7-step magic messaging makeover process that walks through everything. But so I can give you some of the meat and potatoes today that you can take an action on, is the first step of having a good message is being able to know specifically how to communicate in a way that's going to connect and like truly resonate with your ideal client. And I want you to think about the term resonate. Like if you think about 2 tuning forks that, based on frequency, if you have one tuning fork over here, that's at like say 547 megahertz, and you have this tuning fork over here that's at say 519, you can bang the 519, it's not going to move the 527. But if you have 2 at 527, you hit one at 527, the other 527 is going to vibrate as well. And so that's kind of like what it means to be able to say the right words. So the first thing you got to do is figure out what are these symptoms, the very specific, concrete, tangible symptoms and problems and complaints, like the things that my ideal clients are going through. When you can get really clear. So for example, when I was running my weight loss company, my fitness company back in the day, everybody was like that all my other clients were experiencing like stubborn belly fat. Like they just couldn't lose that last 20 pounds of stubborn belly fat. And so they were trying all of these different things like dieting. They were eating 600 calories. They were trying to do 5Ks. They were doing all of the things that they thought they were supposed to do. And so when I would communicate, I would get hyper specific into the actual symptoms. Like, hey, do you have like, 20, 25 pounds of like that stubborn, nasty belly fat that just won't go away no matter what you try? And they're like, yes, right? I'm speaking their language now. I'm vibrating on their wavelengths, on their frequency. And I'm like, despite you trying every diet in the world from X, Y, and Z and labeling the specifics, now all of a sudden they're like, holy crap, And so the more you can get down to the nitty gritty there and even to the beliefs, right? So what do they believe? And maybe you think that, hey, it's just your genetics. It's your genetics that it's like, all right, I'm 35 now, I'm 40 or whatever. This is the way life works. So the more you can tap into the current beliefs, they're going to automatically assume that you have the solution. And so that's step number 1 here in this quote unquote creating demand formula, knowing how to tap in to their current problems. You can label these as symptoms too, because that's how they're experiencing them. The actions that they're taking to try to solve said problems, and then the beliefs that they have to why nothing they're doing is working. You might refer to these as limiting beliefs. Capiche? I don't know why I said that. I literally never say capiche, but it felt like it made sense. It came from my soul. And so that's step number 1. In the opposing side of this is step 1B. You got to know how to communicate to their actual outcomes. I think Hormozy calls this the dream outcome or something like that. What specifically do they want? And not just like could be like, hey, I want to lose my belly fat, right? Or, in my case, I want to build a 6 or 7 figure company, right? Yes, we want to know like the specific, that for sure, but even the aspirational identity they want to step into, right? So like in my fitness example, people, they just wanted to be that fit parent. They wanted to be that role model. And that was an aspirational identity that they really wanted to step into. In my case now in business, a lot of people want to step into being that in-demand coach, the in-demand leader in their space, the person that has a micro brand that's doing, maybe 400 to $1 million a year in sales. Like that's the aspirational identity they want to step into, that recognized authority within their niche. And so when you can really nail that down, it creates this dissonance between the current identity they're stuck in and the aspirational identity they want to move to. And then creating demand is all about inserting ideas, inserting your quote unquote, the bridge to help them be able to walk there. And when you can nail this down, this is I should say step 1A and step 1B. This is going to allow you to be able to have the environment in which you know how to communicate to get people to move forward. Does that make sense? Step 2, once you have this down, we want to be able to create a core piece of conversion content. I love doing some type of live video, and I think live is so important now in 2026, and I can only assume that it's going to continue to happen beyond, because the more AI, this pendulum is swinging of like everybody's just like leaning into this overly processed and edited content where they're outsourcing their voice. It's so fake. The pendulum's going to swing back even harder. So I'm even noticing in my own company and in the companies that I'm doing consulting and coaching for that that's the case too. One of my clients, for example, he's running I'll mention two clients here. So two different industries. One, she is running a weight loss a functional health company for women that are in like that menopausal stage of life, and they're really trying to figure out how to lose weight, get healthier, yada yada. Well, I just had her run a couple of different campaigns where there was a live component to it, where she was doing a core live masterclass, going through and selling the new belief, selling a new big idea, like a unique mechanism, selling social proof, and then selling people on her story. And last I checked from that campaign, I believe she's at like already 5 clients. I think she'll be at 10 new clients by the end of this week. Another client of mine, he is running like kind of like a B2C, like a service based, a biz op is the word I'm looking for. A business opportunity for nurses who are wanting to start IV clinics and med spas, like a wellness business. And as far as I know, here in the last 30 days, he signed up around 20 clients. And the main strategy he's doing is he's doing a live webinar / masterclass / workshop every other week inside of his Facebook group. So the live component is really, really key. And what you want with your core conversion content is you want to take your best messaging, right? What we just talked about in step 1 and step 1A and 1B. And then we want to infuse it here into selling somebody on a new belief. The biggest way to create that demand is selling a new belief. This is going to allow somebody to take a new action when they buy into a new belief. If somebody thinks, for example, in weight loss, that their genetics are the reason they can't lose weight, dude, they're never going to take action if you're just like, no, you can eat whatever you want. Trust me, I'm an expert. So they're going to be like, cool story, bro. But like, they don't believe it to be true. So they're not going to take action. And so we need to be able to shift somebody's belief. And so what is that new belief? So in the example of my weight loss company, the old belief was, I just got to eat healthy. That's just all. And I'm like, no, homie, you got to learn to eat right. So I sold people on the new belief of eating right, not just healthy. I was like, you can eat 300 calories a day of apples. It doesn't mean you're going to get results. It's about eating the right amount of calories, the right proportions, and the right types of foods. And people are like, well, how? How do I do that? Right. And that started to create demand. Do you see what I'm talking about here? The same thing now. So everybody's like, I just got to get more leads, man. I just got to run more ads. And I'm like, dude, I consult with people all the time. This one dude I was just talking to, he was like, man, I created 50 ads, 50 ad creatives. He signed one client in like 60 days. I'm like, do you think leads is your problem? He's getting plenty of leads. Leads is not the problem. It's that the words that he's saying is not attracting the right people, and he has no systematic way to convert people once he gets leads. Do you see what I'm saying? So it's like I'm selling people on the belief of like, you got to fix your words, fool. You got to fix your messaging. You got to fix your words, and you've got to build out an actual ecosystem to be able to convert people predictably. I'm selling people on that idea. Does that make sense? And so you got to sell the new belief. What is your new belief that can contrast their current beliefs that are keeping them stuck? Once you have that, I'm going to give you the next step, that new belief. You've got to sell people on that mechanism, right? What's that new idea, that mechanism? This is another way you create demand. So in my weight loss example, the mechanism was I had what was called a flex fuel nutrition. It was my approach to helping with the nutrition piece. I had an overarching mechanism called the stubborn fat solution. That was the whole methodology and how I taught people workouts, nutrition, the whole shebang. Today, I have what's called the magic messaging makeover. It's how I show people how to fix their messaging, how to infuse belief shifting content in messaging into their marketing so that it can get more pre-sold people booked on their calendar. I have a mechanism, a methodology that I've created around this. What is your mechanism that you're helping people with? And then, of course, telling stories, social proof. When you have your story, client stories, case studies that you can literally walk people through on how somebody adopted this new belief, how somebody applied this unique mechanism, and how that led them from point A, where they're stuck, the struggling identity, to the aspirational identity and everything in between. When you could tell great, powerful stories that are multisensory, people could see it, they can feel it, they can taste it, they can touch it. It's going to allow people to tap into it. Man, this is what starts to shift people's beliefs. And there's many other ways. In fact, if you look in the link in the description, I did a full workshop plus give a 50-page plus playbook on the 8 core beliefs that you need to shift in your content to be able to get more pre-sold people onto your calendar. If you want to dive into that workshop and go full deep into this stuff, just click the link in the description. But my point is, storytelling is one of the best ways to be able to bridge the gap and take somebody from old belief to the new belief and showing and demonstrating how people use the mechanism to get results. This, my friend, starts to create more demand. Do you see how this is all coming together? And then, of course, lastly, we want to be able to, within, step number 2 here on this core piece of conversion content is we need to execute upon the content. And so how I do lives, and you can write this down, it follows a very simple framework called the C5 framework. And this is something that, man, back in the day, so, quick context here, quick story. So I owned a gym from like 2013 to basically COVID to 2020. And it was very successful, lots of up and down. We don't need to get into that story now. But basically around 2019, I committed myself. I was just like, I'm going to go live every single day. I didn't have a time frame when I was going to stop. I was like, at least a year. And so I ended up being about 730 consecutive lives. I may have missed a day here and there from just being transparent. I may have missed like a random Saturday or Sunday or something like that. But more or less, I was pretty consistent for 730 consecutive days where I did lives. And during this process, I came up with this framework that I call the C5 framework. And this allowed me to figure out how to monetize and how to really make a lot of money, millions of dollars in sales from just live video. And now how we do it is in masterclasses, which I'm going to explain here in a minute. Step number 3, the final step that we're going to go into, is going to explain how do you get people to watch your lives? How do you get people to actually buy from you? But when you're doing the lives, you want to go through these 5 different C's. The first C is going to be what I call the chance. This is how you title it. This is how, like, the first 10 seconds, you got to hook people in and think about it as the what. What's in it for them? Immediately, you got to have it to be where there's some curiosity, but they know exactly what you're going to talk about in the video. Does that make sense? It's got to be extremely, really clear. And so this may be going back to the weight loss example. I might be like, hey, I'm going to walk through the 5 biggest mistakes most people make when trying to lose that last 20 pounds of belly fat. If that's interesting to you, then keep on listening, right? Something that's going to immediately get them to want to click and pay attention. C number 2 is what I call the capture. This is where you want to capture their attention. And so most people just go right into like teaching their heart out, informing, and you now know you got to influence. And so instead of just informing people, you want to go into capturing their attention through story. And so I like to go right into calling out the symptoms. So this might be saying like, hey, if you're experiencing like, dude, if you've got like that last 20, 25 pounds of stubborn belly fat, you just can't get rid of no matter what you've tried. And you've tried it all. You've tried X, you've tried Y, you've tried Z. And maybe you think that like, this is just the way life's supposed to be. So you can see how I go through like the symptoms. I go through the actions they're taking, the beliefs, all there. Well, let me tell you a quick story. And I'll go into a story. Now I might tell my story. I might tell a client story of how like Susie went A and B. And that's helping bridge the gap to C number 3. C number 3 is going to be the core. This is where you're dropping the powerful insights, the ahas, the epiphanies, as Russell Brunson calls it, the epiphany bridge story. And in C number 3, we're not just trying to unload information, right? You can even see, like, within this video that I'm doing right now, I'm sharing a lot. Like, I am literally fire hosing you. Hopefully this is very helpful, but you see how I'm peppering in stories. I'm dropping the insights. I'm doing my best to let them land with you. So it's not just about teaching the information. It's about really giving people the ahas, the insights, the things that they truly need to grasp what you teach. Make sense? And so, in this case, if I go back to the fitness example, this might be where I'm dropping, like, it's about eating right. And then I might go into, like, how to eat right, more or less. Once you've delivered that powerful insight, you've now started to plant the new belief, if you've done this correctly. C number 4, my friend, is dynamite. This is where you blow some crap up. And this is where you drop your call to action. And so a great call to action, you need to get specific, clear, tangible. It needs to be very simple. It could be like, hey, if you're looking for some help with this, like step-by-step help of losing that last 20 pounds of stubborn belly fat, this is what I do. I want you to shoot me a DM right now on Instagram and say the word XYZ, right? You want to get really specific, whatever the call to action may be for you. C number 5 is what I call the close. If you look at any great, like, let's look at like Anchorman, any newscaster. He ended with like, "Stay classy, San Diego," right? You want to have a close. And what I like to do with a close is I want to recap what I said. I want to repeat my CTA, and then I like to have a little sign off, just a few words. It makes it memorable. But when you do this in a live, and I like to do this in a live masterclass, this could be on like Facebook, this could be a Zoom workshop that you do. It's going to be much more powerful like that than if it's just a random live. When you do this effectively, you should have shifted people's beliefs. You should have sold them on your unique mechanism. This would come in like the core part of the video, and you should have got them influenced by giving them a good call to action. When you do this all correctly, at least for me and my clients, we will fill up our calendars with sales calls. Or for some of my clients that sell via like, sales pages or offer docs, they're going to fill up their DMs and they're going to create sales from doing just like one of these a month. Now, the last part of this that I'm going to share is you got to get butts in seats, right? And the way to get butts in seats is going to be twofold. And you can write this down. The first thing that you've got to understand is you got to run campaigns. You can't just like go live and hope people are going to show up. You got to get people there. And the way to do this is what I call conversion content campaigns. And so the way to run a conversion content campaign is you want to have a sequence of content. Typically, this will be about a 7-day period where you're running maybe 3 to 4 posts. You can use emails that you're going to have a really good hook. So this would be like whatever your masterclass is, your workshop is, you would have a good hook for it. And then you would have a good call to action, and you're going to create some promotional content to get people to show up and watch, or to get people to consume the recordings. Does that make sense? Really important. But the overarching thing of this is you want to have an ecosystem people can live in. The more you can do that, the more people are going to build trust with you over time. And this, quite frankly, is the systematic way to get people. And this is why at the beginning I said how coaching and consulting businesses with less than 2,000 followers are outselling influencers, because they get people to live in this ecosystem, this middle of funnel. And so if you think about a good content ecosystem, kind of like the Bermuda Triangle, the Bermuda Triangle, you have Puerto Rico, Florida, and Bermuda, right? And there's a mysterious pool in the middle of it that pulls in ships, planes, and yada, yada. Well, a good content ecosystem acts like that too, where you might have your Facebook or Instagram as your top of funnel. You will have like an email list and maybe like a YouTube channel, right? That's going to be more like a middle of funnel. And then you're going to have these conversion events, these live masterclasses that people can now consume. And when you do this effectively and you're really dripping out the right types of content, periodically throughout the week, and you're staying diverse with it, you're going to allow people to truly build that know, like, and trust. You're going to build that authority. You're going to create what's called a micro brand. And that way, when you do run these masterclasses, you're going to get a lot more people to show up, and you're going to have a lot more people already pre-sold if your messaging is dialed in if you're doing the job of shifting beliefs. And so that is how you go about doing it. Now, if you want to go deeper in this, the first step to all of this is you really got to get clear on your messaging. You've got to get clear on how to shift all of the core beliefs. This is going to be the 5% that produces 95% of the results. So if you want to go deeper, you can click the link in my description. There is a full workshop a full workshop and playbook that you can dive into and go deep. And if you have any questions on this, let me know. Make sure to click subscribe for more, and we'll chat really soon. Remember, your message matters now more than it ever has before. Don't be afraid to speak it. Be seen, be heard, and be impactful.